Today on Your Money, we're talking theme parks, roller coasters, and rides, how to save money on tickets. Plus, I sit down with a Disney travel agent to learn all the secrets to save money on your next trip. And Disney's Genie Pass. Some say it's the best way to beat the lines. But how does it work? And is the extra cost worth it? All that and more coming up on Your Money. Welcome to Your Money. I'm your host, Gordon Severson, here today to save you some money on theme park vacations. My wife and I are planning a summer trip with our kids, and we're doing all the research to find the best deals and the best times to travel. So I thought, why not share some of that information with all of you? I called in the experts to give us all the lowdown on how to save money on all of the roller coasters and rides. My first guest has possibly the best job in the world. He and his team get to try out all of the latest rides and attractions at theme parks across the country. He gave me some great advice on how to save money and the best theme parks that most people have never heard of. Check it out.
This is when you really get down to it, and it's like, oh, school's almost out. What are we going to do for the summer? First of all, for the tickets, you're going to want to look for deals on the tickets. And there aren't always deals. And a lot of times in the summer, they don't have deals as well because they're busy enough. They don't need to offer deals. So keep an eye out for that. You definitely want to buy your tickets ahead of time. Don't just show up at the theme park and walk up and say how much for 5 tickets. You're going to pay maximum price that way. You look at things like parking. How much is it to park? Would it be cheaper for me to Uber there? And back? Is there bus options? Another option to save some money is some theme parks have hotels on site. Of course, Disney and Universal do, but some other ones do. Knott's Berry Farm has their own hotel as well, and it's walking distance to the park. So if you're looking to go, see if there's either a hotel that is a theme park hotel or one that they work with and they offer a deal with. And sometimes you may not save money on your ticket, but you'll save by getting fast passes or a way to skip the line if you stay at that hotel, or get into the park, an hour before any other guests can get in. If you know the park you're going to, and you know you're going whenever it is, you're going next summer or whatever, this summer, follow their Facebook pages, follow their Instagram and their X if they have it or whatever, because that's where you might find deals. And also sign up for their newsletters, because that's the main place you're going to see the deals come through in your emails. Everybody knows Disney and Universal are kind of the standards for theme parks, but some that I like that people may not have heard of is Silver Dollar City in Branson, Missouri is a really great park, and high-class attractions and a really cool theme of being back in the old days, and they have craftsmen all around the park and great shows. And sister park of that is Dollywood. So a lot of people know Dollywood, may not have been, but it's an awesome park to visit as well. And there's Hershey Park in Pennsylvania, which is themed to Hershey candy. So, and they have some great roller coasters and things there as well. And there's a park in Indiana called Holiday World, and they have different lands themed to different holidays, like Christmas area, and they just opened a new roller coaster called Good Gravy. You're riding in a gravy boat roller coaster, and that's in the Thanksgiving area, and they have a fun area where you go through and target at turkeys all through the ride, and a little dark ride. Some of these other theme parks, you may not have heard of the theme park or any of the rides there, but they can be really fun, but then they are a little bit cheaper. You still, even if you're not going to an expensive park, you want to look for deals and get your tickets ahead of time no matter where you go. Value-wise, yes. Is it inexpensive? No. It can be expensive. There's ways to save money by, if the park allows it, bring your food with you and limit your meals there at the park and things like that. But it can be expensive. But value-wise, if you're going to spend $100 and some dollars, $200 to go see a Broadway play for 2 hours, or you can spend $100 and go to an amusement park and spend all day long seeing multiple shows, riding rides.
Another great tip he shared was if you live close to a theme park, you should consider buying a season pass. He crunched the numbers, and in some cases, if you visit the park just 3 times, you're saving money. So if you plan to spend a few days at the park during your trip, or you might stop by again later this summer, a season pass could be a cheaper way to go. Coming up after the break, I sit down with a travel agent who is an expert on all things Disney. She gives me the lowdown on how to score some cheap tickets. And what about hotels? Is it better to stay in the park or to find a cheaper hotel down the road? It's all coming up, so stay with us on Your Money. For a lot of people, planning a Disney trip can be overwhelming if you've never done it before. So to help us all get some good ideas on how to get started, I've asked one of the experts to come on the show. This is Jennifer McCormick. She is a travel planner who specializes in Disney trips. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
So I think the first thing we should talk about, and you shared a little bit of information for me that was pretty shocking, is that Disneyland and Disney World, what's different about them? You were saying the size of them. I was really surprised to hear how much bigger Disney World is than Disneyland.
Right, so Disney World property is significantly larger than Disneyland. But Disneyland, when it started, it began as, Walt Disney's love letter to his kids and to families, and really wanting it to be a destination park, a theme park. That took off, of course, and he realized we need more space, we need more property, and so went and started the Disney World project. Disney World has grown significantly over the years, and so Disney World property is now roughly the size of San Francisco.
The whole city, wow.
The city of San Francisco. So when you think about visiting Disney World, so many people ask me, how long should I plan a trip to do it all? And the answer is that you can't do it all. There's no way in 7 days or even a year that you can do everything at Disney World. Disneyland is different. Disneyland is a much smaller complex. So if you think Disney World property is about 25,000 acres, Disneyland property in California is about 500 acres. You've got 2 fantastic parks, the original Disneyland, and then Disney California Adventure Park, which is much newer. You've got 3 resorts there, lots of good neighbor hotels because of course it was built in a more residential area. And so Disney World is a destination, international destination in and of itself. Disneyland is as well, but it's a lot more approachable.
So 25,000 to 500.
Right.
It's about 50 times bigger.
Right.
I was expecting maybe like 3 or 4 times bigger, but 50 times bigger kind of surprised me. Yeah. So what, I guess, are the pros and cons of going versus Disneyland versus Disney World? I have young kids, and we were kind of looking at like which one is better for younger kids, which one's bigger for older kids. So what are some of the things that people should know about the differences between the 2 parks?
Right. Well, I wouldn't say one is better for older, one is better for younger. I think it's the type of vacation that you're looking for. It could be the locations. For some folks, it's easier to get to Florida. For some, it's easier to get to California. It could be the length of your trip. And so typically I find that families who are looking for a much shorter trip tend to go with the Disneyland option because it's easier to see more in a couple of days. Typically, families who are looking for a longer trip, a week, 2 weeks, will go to Disney World and be entertained at Disney World the entire time.
And here on this show, we're all about saving money. And one thing that's that I'm curious about is, if you book far in advance, can you save some money, and how far in advance should you be booking your trip?
This is a fantastic question, and I think there's a really common misconception about this, but for Disney World or Disneyland, the best thing you can do for yourself is book as far in advance as you possibly can. This is because, of course, prices increase, as trips get closer, prices always increase, so it's important to have those packages booked. But also with Disney World and Disneyland, the way that most people book is they book a room and ticket package together. And so when you book a package, you put down a $200 deposit. That $200 deposit is 100% refundable until your final payment date, which is 30 days prior to check-in. You can make any changes you want in that time, add things, take away things, increase your park days, add the park hopper option, lots of different options that you can put on your package, but you've locked in the location where you want to stay and those early rates. And if you decide for some reason you can't travel, you get that money back. Or if you decide this isn't the right time, I want to push it out to a future date, you can do that with no penalties.
So is it like 6 months ahead of time or a year that you start to see, or when should people start to kind of be thinking about that?
That's a great question. I mean, that really depends. For Disney World, we can book right now out through trips starting October 31st, 2025. So if you're looking through most of 2025, now is the time to book, to get everything on your calendar, also to potentially start making payments toward your trip. But for Disneyland, we can only book through the end of 2024. They tend to release the next year's packages around August, early mid-August. But as far as discounts are concerned, it really depends. So Disney World often has what they call future stay offers or bounce backs. They want folks to come back. And so the way that works is within 7 days of checkout, you can book a trip for the next year. This year, the bounce back offers are only offered through the end of 2024 so far, but you can book your next trip at up to about 35% off. So a significant savings. And so I tell all of my clients, it's really wise if you're thinking about it just to do that. Put down the $200 deposit. If you can't travel, fine. You can always cancel, have those funds refunded. But if not, you probably have the best possible discount you could get. So there are lots of tips and tricks and tools, but the best thing you can do for yourself is plan as far out as you can.
And I know there are a lot of hotels inside the parks, and a lot of them right outside, like a block outside.
Yeah,
what are the pros and cons of staying inside the park versus outside?
That's a fantastic question. I'll start with, they're different. So Disney World and Disneyland, because of the size of the properties and how they work, different pros and cons. But for Disney World, I would say for the vast majority of families, their best benefits are going to be staying at a Disney World owned and operated resort. This is because you get 30 minutes early entry to every park every day. So you already have early access to the parks. And if you're not an early morning person, I recommend that you become an early morning person, at least for some of your Disney days, because you can get a lot done in that early time before they open to the general public. Other important things is that at Disney World, you have early booking benefits for dining reservations and for what Disney World calls enchanting extras. So special extra things that can be booked 60 days in advance. For Disney World resort guests, they're able to book them 60 days in advance for the length of their stay. So there are certain things that are fully booked by 60 days. So if you're staying off property, you might not be able to get into the Bibbidi Bobbidi Boutique. You might not be able to get the highly sought after character dining experience that you are looking for because of the fact that your Disney World resort guests may have booked those 70 days in advance because of that priority. And then there are some discounts that are offered. A big one for Disney World for 2025 is that on your arrival day, you will have free access to a Disney water park. So we know lots of people like to get a jump on their trips. They book their trip and then they find the earliest possible flights if they're flying down, or if they're driving, they might drive to within a couple of hours of Disney World property, spend the night, get to Disney World. They arrive at their resort. Of course, the room's not ready yet, at 9 or 10 o'clock in the morning. So what do? At Disney World, you always have access to your resort all day on your check-in day, all day on your checkout day. So if you have a park ticket for that day, you can leave your bags with Bell Services, you can head to the park. But in 2025 now, if you'd like, you can leave your bags with Bell Services and go to one of the 2 Disney World water parks completely for free.
How about Disneyland?
Yep.
I know I saw, if you're just looking for my own trip, is that a lot of the hotels in the park were a little more expensive than the ones out. So is it worth the extra money for the Disneyland side that you're paying?
That totally depends on the family. Disneyland only has 3 Disneyland owned and operated resorts. They're all pretty much deluxe level resorts. They've got quite a bit of amenities, really wonderful pools. They have specialty access to Disney California Adventure Park. So there's a private entrance that's outside of the main entrance. And then guests staying at the Grand Californian Disneyland Hotel or Pixar Place get 30 minutes early entry to one park each day. So it alternates. It's not the same. Now at Disneyland, if you're looking for more value accommodations, Disney World has value resorts, they have moderate resorts, they have deluxe resorts. Disneyland has more on the end of the deluxe resorts, of the owned and operated resorts. We see a lot more families booking Good Neighbors because they are, in some cases, right across the street. And so you might see a much better value right across the street. You'll lose the early entry, you'll lose some of those private entrances, but if you're saving a significant amount of money, if that's what fits in the budget, that's great. I personally love to be in the Disney bubble. I love my Disney resorts, but sometimes it makes sense to, to stay across the street. Some of the hotels across the street will have free breakfasts and other amenities that you don't necessarily get at the Disneyland owned and operated hotels.
Another big question I had too is for someone who's never planned a trip.
Right.
What's, I guess, a good budget that it would, or what does it typically cost for, let's say, like a family of 4 to get a package of, flying out there, and then maybe they're staying for a couple of days? What should they budget for? This
varies greatly, and something that, I work very closely with families on because it can depend completely on the time of year that you can travel, what days of the week you can travel, and then again, how far in advance you're able to plan. If flights are about 400, under 400 unless I'm looking at the last week in December or a major spring break week, that's usually what I'm looking for. For a package, it depends on how long you want to stay. So, and again, this can vary on the time of year. So if you're looking at September or January or an off season, you can spend significantly less. I was running some numbers, and if you are doing, a free dining promotion at a moderate resort for a family of 5, say 6 nights, 5-day park tickets, it's about $175 per person per day. If you're looking the last week in December, double or triple that easily.
Oh, wow.
Sometimes more. If you're looking at deluxe accommodations, that's more. If you're looking for higher level dining, experiences, that's more. So, an entry level really depends on how much, how long families are planning on staying, but also when they can travel. So I always recommend, if at all possible, an off season, one of those times when it's a better experience in the parks too, because it's not packed. Disneyland, whether you are staying at a Good Neighbor or a Disneyland resort hotel, that's always going to be a bit more. California is more expensive, but also you tend to stay a shorter period of time. And I know it doesn't make, it's sort of counterintuitive to think about it that way, but when you're thinking about park tickets, that's probably the bulk of what you're spending is the cost of your park tickets. At Disney World, especially, the more days you have, the less you pay per day. So for example, if you've got a 5-day park ticket, you're looking to add a 6th day, tickets are variable depending on the season, but you could be paying as little as $15 or $20 to add that 6th day. So the difference between a 4-day park ticket and a 10-day park ticket is roughly the cost of just one standalone park day. So if families are wanting to stay longer, not feel so rushed, you're not spending quite as much on tickets there. Disneyland, you still pay less per day as you add days on, but most families aren't, spending 10 days at Disneyland. The maximum ticket is a 5-day ticket. And so, I would say starting at maybe about $200 per person per day at a Good Neighbor for, say, a 4-night stay, 3-day park tickets, and of course, the sky's the limit from there on what you can add.
Well, thank you so much for giving us a little bit of a preview so all of us can start planning if we're looking at planning a trip. Thanks so much for stopping by.
Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Coming up next, have you heard of Disney's Genie Pass? It can save you a bunch of time and money, and I sat down with an expert to try to figure out how it works. Stay tuned. If you are planning a trip to Disneyland or Disney World, you've probably heard of the Genie Plus program. There's a lot of information out there and a lot of confusion about what this is all about. So we decided to ask one of the experts to come on the show to help us make sense out of this program, how it works, is it beneficial, is it a good idea? So I've asked Rob Daniel to come on the show. He has a YouTube channel called Ear Scouts. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thanks so much for having me, Gordon.
So I saw on your YouTube channel, you talk about the Genie Plus program, the pros and cons. How does this program work? What is it all about?
So essentially, if you've been to Disney previously before the pandemic, there was a system called Fast Pass, which was complimentary Genie Plus is the program that has replaced that system. Unfortunately, now you do need to pay for it, but it does also work a little bit differently than the old FastPass system did. Essentially, though, the idea is you're going to pay a little bit extra each day per person, and you're going to get to skip the main queue on most attractions. You get a shorter wait with what they call the lightning lane. Now, there are some attractions that are not included with Genie Plus where you have to pay additionally, but most of the attractions at all 4 parks at Walt Disney World and to a lesser extent, the parks over at Disneyland offer Genie Plus lightning lanes.
So being able to avoid the wait, that's a huge plus. I'm sure a lot of people will love that. But what kind of what's the cost kind of ballpark? Like, what kind of amount should people expect to be paying for this service here?
So it depends on when you're coming to the parks, how busy they are, and whether you're going to one park in particular or all 4. But the price ranges from a low of around $15 to a current high of $39. But that has continued to creep up. So I wouldn't be surprised to see that go higher. But right now, $15 to $39. And that's per person per day.
Okay, so if you got a family of 5, just budget for that. It's gonna help out, but that is some extra cost just to plan for in your budget of your trip. So how does it all work? I was kind of reading a little bit online that you can kind of book ahead, and there's like a 2-hour window kind of a thing, or you can do it every 2 hours. How does it all work?
So unlike the line skipping services that you'll find at other parks, which incidentally are usually a lot more expensive, the way that Disney keeps the price down is by letting a lot more people use it, but they require you to essentially book your spot in each of the different lines. So you get initially 1 slot that you can book starting at 7 a.m. if you're here at Disney World. It's a little different at Disneyland. You can book when you enter the park. But here at Disney World, you can book that first ride at 7 a.m. And then you can book another one either after you've tapped in and entered the lightning lane for that first ride, or after waiting 2 hours from the time that you booked it. But there's a little asterisk there for times that you book before the park opens. So when you booked at 7 a.m., that 2-hour clock doesn't actually start counting until the park opens. So for that first ride of the day, it's really important. You want to try to get an early return time so that you can get in, tap in at that ride, and go ahead and book another one without having to wait 2 hours until after the park opens.
So it's just kind of like setting appointments periodically throughout the day. You got to stay on top of it.
Yes. And the other thing that's important to know, and I recommend anyone who plans to use this service, you are going to benefit greatly by taking some time before you go, watch some YouTube videos, get a sense of how this system works, because it's not as straightforward as going in and just choosing a time like you would book an appointment for, getting your hair done. You essentially are getting offered whatever is the current best available time. But for really popular rides, the best available time might not be until later that night. What I recommend doing is, as soon as you can, just go ahead and keep refreshing the view on the screen where you book those rides. I call it playing the Disney Genie slots, because it's kind of like spinning the reels on a slot machine, and you're hoping that the ride you want is going to come up with a good time. But if you don't see what you want, you just kind of keep refreshing. The downside to this, of course, is this is taking up time that you would otherwise be spending enjoying the park. So I always try to do this kind of thing, booking my next ride, maybe when I'm in the line for something else. So I wouldn't be doing anything else anyway. That's a great time to go ahead and book that next ride.
And I know there's this whole subculture of people that are really into this, that talk about it and have strategies and tips. But I like what you said, is that you can very much get over obsessed with it, and before you know it, you're spending so much of your vacation with this app and getting into it and getting sucked in and not enjoying the moment. That's a good thing to think about.
It's a balance, really, and I think the benefit to the way that the other parks do it is you just get into the short line and you don't have to think about it or plan anything, which that's great. But in order to make that possible, they cost exponentially more than Genie Plus does. So I think what Disney is offering is a better value, but you're just going to have to work more at it. You're going to have to learn how to use the system, and it's definitely way more complicated, but it's also a lot cheaper.
And one thing for people to keep in mind is that there are some rides that aren't a part of this. You have to pay separately to get into the fast lane, or the lightning lane. If you could talk about that a little bit.
Yes, and surprise, surprise, those are the most popular rides in the different parks. So Disney knows that with those rides, they can charge a premium and people will pay it because it's the most important thing. For example, Rise the Resistance at Disneyland and here at Hollywood Studios, that one is very popular. Tron, the newest ride over at Magic Kingdom. I'm guessing that when Tiana's Bayou Adventure opens, which probably will be very soon, that one will probably have an individual attraction lightning lane as well. With that, it is a little bit easier because you can essentially book the time that you want. So in the morning, if you're staying in a Disney hotel, you can book starting at 7 a.m. Everyone else has to wait until the park opens. But if you're staying at a hotel, you're going to get a pretty wide range of times to choose from for the ride you want. So you can really plan it more into your day. Whereas with Genie Plus, it's a little bit more like an ongoing lottery. You're really not sure what you're going to get. You're just going to cross your fingers and hope for the best.
So with everything we talked about, when you add everything up, is Genie Plus worth the money? Do you get enough benefit out of it that it would be worth for a family to invest that money into it?
I think this depends obviously a lot on your plan. If you're trying to do a whole lot in a short period of time, maybe you don't have as much time or as much money to be able to do 4 full days at Disney World because there's 4 different parks. It can definitely be a money saver if you're going to compress your trip. And so you're going to get all those important rides that you want to get done, but you're going to get them done in fewer days. That can obviously be cheaper than going for more days at the park. That said, if you're already planning a longer, more extended visit to the parks, then Genie Plus is more of a luxury item. It's not something that's going to be required to do everything that you want to do. It's just going to mean you're going to enjoy more things at the park rather than spending a lot more time waiting in the lines.
Great. Well, thanks so much for filling us in. I hope everyone learned a little bit about this Genie Plus program. And like you said, Rob, if you have more questions, there's a lot of YouTube channels like yours. There's a lot of great resources out there, some tricks on social media. People are already always posting hacks and things like that. So thank you so much for coming on the show and walking us through this.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
All right, I know I gave you a lot of information just now. Planning a trip can be stressful and overwhelming at times. I personally have to remind myself to take a breath. This is supposed to be fun. You're planning a vacation after all, so don't worry. The biggest takeaway I had from these experts is to plan ahead. Give yourself some time, and that should take away some of the stress of planning a trip. If you're short on time, scale it back. Don't make things too complicated. That's all for today. I'm Gordon Severson, helping you save, spend, and invest your money wisely. I'll see you next time.